Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jake at That Fit Friend, and today I'll be reviewing the Inov8 F-Lite. So 3 things to like with this shoe. Number one, this is a really good Inov8 shoe that walks in that middle ground of being really great for cross training, CrossFit, and lifting. So with the Inov8 training shoes, like the current lineup, I have filmed a video comparing them all up there. It's going to be linked. But you have the F-Lite, which is the most versatile, the F-Lite, which is kind of like in that middle ground between doing a little bit of everything, and then you have the F-Lite Max, which is your most stable shoe. This model, I think, feels very similar to like the 260 V2 in the sense that it gives you enough stability for heavy lifting, but it's also bouncy enough for short runs, plyometrics, jump rope, etc. So if you want that training shoe from Inov8 that can do a little bit of everything and you're regularly taking like CrossFit classes and whatnot, this can be a really good option to go with. The second thing to like with this shoe is the toe box width. So this model is built wider. And so if you want a wider toe box, most of the Inov8 shoes are leaning towards this now, but this model does a really good job at ticking that box. So for example, if you find like the Rad 1 or the traditional TRCX T2, not the wide iteration, feels too narrow for you, this could be a good option to go with in the sense that it's a really well-rounded option like those shoes, but it does give you more width. Now I will say there is some taper here through the midfoot, and I'll talk about that in my cons. But for my folks out there who just want a really wide toe box, this can be a good option. And with the mesh upper and the knit upper, you do get a bit more upper volume in this shoe as well to give you a more spacious fit. The third thing to like with this shoe has been the overall durability. For most gym workouts, this model should do a really good job at delivering a nice durable fit and feel. So you have this midfoot cage here, you also have a decent structure on the boot, and you have a wrap here around the midfoot for additional rope climbing support and whatnot. And with the upper construction, I have yet to have issues on my F-Lite Max, and that model has the same upper, and I have abused that model. And with this model too, I have yet to have issues. And so with the commonality between those materials and those two shoes, I think you should be plenty fine with the F-Lite regarding any form of abrasion on the toe box. You have an internal toe guard here to give you additional structure and support. And again, this material, despite feeling light, it doesn't feel like it's going to break down super quick from abrasion. But all I have to say, let's talk about a few cons that I have with the F-Lite. So 3 cons I've noticed with the F-Lite is number one, if you have a narrower foot, you're going to want to probably steer clear of the shoe because with the wider toe box here, you might find that you're actually swimming around in this model and you don't find you get enough security. So for my folks out there with low volume feet or medium to narrow feet, some options to look into that really deliver a good well-rounded performance include the Rad 1, the TRCX T2, or you can go with like a Strike Move and Haze trainer, and all of those will give you a slightly narrower width throughout the toe box and a slightly lower profile with the upper. So a few options out there for my narrower feet folks. Not necessarily an outright con against this shoe, but it is a con for certain foot anatomies. The second con that I have with this model is if you have a flatter foot and you don't like arch in your shoes, you might not resonate with the taper of the midfoot here and the narrower heel. With Inov8 shoes, they traditionally have that kind of like triangle like shape to them, as in the forefoot's wide and they taper in and they have that narrower heel. That works for some athletes and lifters, but for others it can be a huge turnoff. And if you don't like any form of arch, or if you need a boxier heel, that would definitely be something to consider with this shoe. The third con that I have with this shoe, and this is more cosmetic than anything else, is the laces can run a little bit long, which is kind of annoying. If you have a lower volume foot, that's going to be more of an issue. Like this shoe here, I don't have it cranked super tight. Like this is secure enough to where I could slide my foot in and off for more casual use and more casual sessions, but when I crank this tight, the laces do run a bit long. I've had to actually tuck them in, and because they are more of the slick lace, it is kind of annoying from my OCD context of just wanting a bit more, you know, lace security and also just not having laces flopping all around while I'm training. But not necessarily a con against the shoe's outright performance, but it is one of those little construction features where I'm just like, dang it, I wish these weren't so long. But now let's talk about the performance of the F-Lite. To break down the performance of the Inov8 F-Lite, I'll discuss how the shoe does for lifting, cross-training, CrossFit, short runs, and at daily wear. In the context of lifting, I have enjoyed this shoe, and I think if you're somebody who just wants a shoe for strength workouts and hypertrophy workouts, this model can work really great. Now granted, the F-Lite Max will give you a bit more stability because it has that TPU through the midfoot interjecting into the heel, but this shoe has been exceptional. I've deadlifted over 400 in the shoe with no issues. I've done heavier lunges in the shoe with no issues, and I do like the MetaFlex up here in the forefoot because it does give that forefoot a little bit more flexibility, and the shoe breaks in pretty quick. So from a overall leg day and strength training context, this shoe has delivered, and I also really like the 4mm drop in the shoe. Feels very similar to older CrossFit shoes, cross-training shoes that I really like in the sense of drop and how much heel this shoe gives you. And then also you have the PowerFlow Max midsole in this shoe, which is also similar to the F-Lite Max, and it does have that more medium density feel where it walks a fine line between being plush enough and bouncy and reactive enough for things like cleans and snatches and stuff where you want a little bit more feedback from the ground, but then it also stabilizes pretty good in the catch and when you're trying to stabilize for heavier lifts. And so from a lifting point of view, I do think this shoe does a good job, and I like the wider forefoot for toe splay. Now, when it comes to CrossFit and cross training, I have also really liked this shoe. I think it does a really good job at giving you that more well-rounded performance if you want that one-stop shoe for doing a little bit of everything. You can do short runs and wads in this, you can do box jumps, burpees, etc., and it feels pretty good. And you can also do more lateral bouts of training, and it does a decent job. You have the cradle here around the midfoot to give you lateral security, but what I will say is with the upper being a little bit looser, and because we don't have a reinforced wall here, I think if you do have that narrower foot where you're sliding around in the toe box of the shoe, you might find that it's actually not secure enough for your needs. And so that would be a context of cross training that might actually hinder this shoe's performance for you. I also think that if you are potentially pushing a 3 to 4E with foot, where you are a little bit more prone to spillover in your shoes, you might also have an issue with this. I actually don't know if that's gonna be as much of an issue for your foot anatomy, because if you get the midfoot security right, I think you'll be less prone just because you'll be pushing into this material, so it will help lock you down a tiny bit more. But definitely food for thought there regarding just the overall structure of the lateral forefoot when doing things like skater strides and whatnot. I haven't had any issues. I have an E to double E with foot, but that is some food for thought out there for certain foot anatomies where they might find that the toe box is just a little bit too wide and they're not actually able to press against that sidewall and give themselves a little bit more security in the shoe. But for the most part, the shoe has done a good job. Their outsole is grippy enough for training on turf and different surfaces, and if you're an athlete, this model can work pretty well for your needs as well. And honestly, I feel like for most athletes who are doing things like explosive movements blended with lifting and then like short runs or agility workouts, not a lot of folks think of the Inov8 shoes, but they tend to do a really good job. And if you're gonna go with one of the models in their current training shoe lineup, the F-Lite would be the call there. When it comes to short runs, the shoe is okay. Look, you can use them for 400 meters, 800 meters, 1,000 meters, and even a mile jaunt here and there pre or post workout. I have liked this shoe for my interval runs when I sprinkle them into my workout. So for example, I program myself a lot of 400 meter to 1,000 meter intervals in my sessions to give myself a nice cardio stimulus, but then also focus on more of the high rock style running. And the shoe has done a good job for those needs. Now, granted, I am very much on my forefoot for that bout of running, and that's what makes this shoe, I think, feel better. And so for longer runs, for example, if you're doing more than a couple of miles and you are more of a heel striker, that's where this shoe can start to fall short. And I would say you might want to go for a more hybrid focused shoe like the F-Lite, or go for a running shoe in that vertical. But for short runs, this shoe can work, and it feels a heck of a lot better than the F-Lite Max, which obviously has a TPU, which will always hinder the performance of that shoe in that vertical. When it comes to daily wear, the shoe has done a pretty good job. It's breathable, it's wide, and it feels pretty casual. I like that you can also wear this shoe a little bit looser and slide it on and then wear it out and about, and you don't have to worry about security in it. So that is a perk of this shoe that I think the F-Lite Max can't deliver on. Now, between the F-Lite and the F-Lite, if you want your shoe for daily wear and training, if you're more of a hybrid person, go with the F-Lite. It works great for daily wear and it's gonna feel comfortable. But if you are, again, that CrossFit athlete or that lifter that wants that shoe for heavier lifting too, and then daily wear as well. So when it comes to lifting, I would give this shoe a strong 8 out of 10. For CrossFit and cross training, an 8.5 out of 10. For short runs, I would give it a 7.5, 8 out of 10, just because it will work for short stuff, but it's not gonna be the best shoe out there for runs longer than a mile. And then for daily wear, I'd give this shoe a strong 8 out of 10, as in it can be a decent shoe, I think, for doing a little bit of everything, but then also wearing for travel and whatnot and remaining relatively comfortable. All right, when it comes to the price of the F-Lite, you can expect to pay $140. Now, this is in line with the older Inov8 training shoes, and if you've worn Inov8 shoes, then that price point shouldn't surprise you. The F-Lite costs $130, this is $140, and then the F-Lite Max is $150. And when you look at the scope of training shoes on the market, they tend to range between $130 and $150. So the shoe is right in the middle of the road, and honestly, I do feel like it's worth it if you're trying to find that one shoe for doing a bit of everything. All right, so now who should buy the Inov8 F-Lite? Number one, if you like a wider toe box in your training shoes, this can be a viable option to go with. It's a model that I would say rivals models like the Born Primitive Savage 1 regarding you width in the forefoot. It's definitely not going to be as good for flat feet, so the Born Primitive Savage 1 would take the edge there, but for wide toe box lovers, this can be a great option. The second context where I think this shoe makes a lot of sense is if you want that single shoe for lifting, cross training, and CrossFit, the F-Lite will do a great job. It is going to be your most versatile option in the training shoe lineup from Inov8 at the moment that can do a little bit of everything and feel relatively comfortable in doing doing so, and there's not going to be a clear hindrance of performance. The third context where I think the shoe makes a lot of sense is if you like a little bit of arch support in your shoes, this shoe will feel pretty good. I have a normal arch and I do notice the arch support in the shoe. Now flat feet, steer clear of it, but if you do like a bit of arch support in your training shoes and you still want that wide toe box, again, this can be a great option. Now who should pass on this shoe? Speaking of the arch, if you hate arch support in your shoes, pass on this model. I don't think you're gonna love the taper here and the narrower heel. And the second context where I think the shoe falls short is if you are somebody, once again, with a narrower foot. You're not gonna wanna likely invest in the shoe because I don't think you'll get enough upper security to help you from sliding around in the toe box of this model, so it can fall short for certain cross training and CrossFit contexts for that foot anatomy. All right, to break down the sizing and fit of the F-Lite, it's a little interesting because the shoe can feel short at times, but then it could also feel fine for others. And so with different widths, I think that will dictate the sizing that you should go with. So with narrower feet, I think you should be safe going true to size in the shoe if you decide to bite the bullet and try them out and see if they fit for you and work for you. But for medium width feet, if you like a bit more room in your toe box, I would say go up a half size. If you like a snugger fit, true to size will be the call, so go with the same size that you go with in your Nikes, Reeboks, Adidas, etc. with the F-Lite. And then for wider feet, I feel like you should just default to sizing up a half size. So if you have an E to 2E, even wider foot width, I would say go up a half size because they can feel a little bit short at times. And if you like to traditionally wear thicker socks while training, you'll also want to size up a half size in the F-Lite. And honestly, more and more, I feel like the F-Lite, F-Lite, and F-Lite Max, the meta is kind of going off of that sizing based off all the data points from my reviews, but then also the feedback from the community. So again, narrower feet, if you decide to give this shoe a go, I would say true to size. Medium feet, it's going to be true to size or half size depending on your preferences. And then wide feet, I would say probably default to going up a half size in the shoe, or if you like a snugger fit, you can go true to size as well. And they can work, especially if you wear thinner socks. All right, so when it comes to the weight, heel toe drop, and insole in the F-Lite, for my size 10 shoe here, we have a weight of 10.65 ounces. The heel to toe drop of this shoe sits at 4 millimeters, and this model does have a thin foam removable insole. You have the boomerang footbed in this shoe, which I personally love, and I am stoked that Inov8 is using this insole in all of their current training shoes. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the Inov8 F-Lite. Up here on the toe box, you have an extended outsole that comes up, so it is biased towards the big toe, and it is pretty wide. I like that for durability. Looking at the upper in the shoe, you have this breathable mesh upper that runs throughout the forefoot and then bleeds into the midfoot here and the heel. You have an internal toe guard in the shoe, so the toe does have a bit of structure here, as you can see. And then you also have this rubber TPU Met cradle here going up the midfoot. This is designed to promote security, but then also give you additional durability from abrasion. Looking at the midfoot itself, you have 5 core eyelets that go up with a padded mesh tongue. There is a low gusset on this tongue, and it does have a security loop here. The tongue slides still a bit despite having all of this, so if you like to wear your shoes looser, definitely keep that in mind. Back here on the boot, you have some Inov8 branding. The boot has a bit of structure, which can be a good thing if you like more maneuverable and flexible shoes regarding uppers and not feeling too bulky. There's also some Inov8 branding back here on the medial side of the boot and back here on the boot itself. Looking at the midsole, you have that PowerFlow Max midsole that runs throughout the entirety of the shoe. Again, it's more of that medium density foam, so as you can see, it can compress, but it's not going to be so soft to where you can't lift heavy in this model. You also have an extended outsole wrap here on the medial and the lateral side of the midfoot for additional rope climbing support and durability. That is the rope tech that has been used in most of Inov8 training shoes over the last few years. And you have a full rubber outsole here with a break up here in the forefoot with that MetaFlex tech. This is also standard for Inov8 shoes. This tends to last a while, so I wouldn't necessarily be concerned of durability with this shoe, but if you do a lot of outdoor training and sprints and whatnot, maybe keep an eye on this, but for the most part, Inov8's shoes have been pretty good at not breaking down too quick with that. Looking at the insole, once again, you do have the boomerang footbed in the shoe, but if you have additional questions on the construction of this model, drop a comment down below. All right, y'all, that's up my review of the Inov8 F-Lite. Now, would I buy this shoe again? Honestly, yes, I have enjoyed this model. I like that it kind of serves that middle ground between the F-Lite and the F-Lite Max, so it's that kind of like, I don't have to think about the shoe I want to use for my training session, whereas those two, you have to be a bit more strategic with your context. But if you have additional questions on this shoe, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, drop subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one. And also, by the way, I do have some F-Lites available on that Fit Friend shop, so definitely check it out if you want to support the channel and my little small business. They will be there, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.